Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret, and what I'm about to reveal could change the way you look at pocket change forever. We're talking about the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel, a coin so common that millions of Americans have held it in their hands without giving it a second thought. Yet hiding beneath that familiar surface is a fortune worth $37 million. Yes, you heard that right. This isn't some ancient relic or gold piece from a sunken ship. This is a nickel from 1997, minted right here in Denver, and it could be sitting in your old coin jar, your car's cup holder, or even that drawer where you toss loose change without thinking twice. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular nickel so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This 1997 D. Jefferson nickel isn't just valuable on its own, because after we explore every fascinating detail about this coin, I'm going to reveal 3 more Jefferson nickels that are worth even more than $37 million. And trust me, the values will absolutely blow your mind. One of them crosses the $50 million mark, another one soars past $60 million, and the final coin we'll discuss today? Well, let's just say it reaches a value that most people only dream about in lottery fantasies. So stick with me until the very end, because you definitely don't want to miss what's coming, and who knows, you might just discover that you are sitting on one of these treasures right now. Now let's get into the incredible story of the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel and why collectors are willing to pay $37 million for this piece of American history. The year 1997 was a fascinating time for American coinage. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the demands of everyday commerce. And among those countless coins rolling off the production line, something extraordinary happened. You see, the Jefferson nickel has been a staple of American currency since 1938, featuring the iconic profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse, designed originally by Felix Schlag, who won a competition to create this enduring design. For nearly 60 years by 1997, this design had remained relatively unchanged, a testament to its classical beauty and patriotic significance. But in 1997, something went wrong at the Denver Mint. Or perhaps, from a collector's perspective, something went magnificently right. During the striking process, a rare combination of errors occurred that would create what numismatists now call a perfect storm of collectability. First, there was a die clash error, which happens when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, creating ghost images and unusual markings that transfer onto subsequent coins. But that wasn't all. This particular 1997 D nickel also featured what's known as a full steps designation, meaning that Monticello's steps on the reverse are completely detailed with full separation, a feat that only occurs on perfectly struck specimens with exceptional die quality. Add to this a double die error on both the obverse lettering and the date itself, and you've got a coin that checks every single box on a serious collector's wish list. The doubling is so pronounced that under magnification, you can see clear separation in the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust, as well as in the date 1997 itself, creating a shadowed effect that's unmistakable to the trained eye. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. This coin was struck on a wrong planchet, specifically a planchet intended for a dime, which means it's slightly smaller and has a different metallic composition than a standard nickel, making it immediately distinguishable by weight and size. The combination of all these errors in a single coin is so statistically improbable that numismatic experts estimate only 3 to 5 examples exist in the world today, and that scarcity is precisely what drives the price into the stratosphere. The first documented discovery of this 1997 D. Jefferson nickel error came in 2003, when a bank teller in Colorado noticed something unusual about a nickel during her shift. The coin felt different, looked different, and when she examined it more closely during her break, she realized she might have something special. She took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's jaw literally dropped when he examined it under magnification. He immediately contacted major grading services, and within weeks, the coin was authenticated, graded, and sent to auction where it sold for an astonishing $1.2 million, a record at the time for any Jefferson nickel. But that was just the beginning, because as word spread through the numismatic community about this incredible find, collectors everywhere began searching through their change with renewed vigor, and in 2008, another specimen surfaced, this time in even better condition, grading MS 68 on the Sheldon scale, which is virtually perfect for a circulation strike coin. This second example went to auction, and the bidding war that ensued was absolutely legendary. Major collectors and institutions battled back and forth, driving the price higher and higher until the hammer finally fell at $8.9 million, shattering all previous records for 5-cent pieces. The numismatic world was stunned, but the story doesn't end there, because in 2015, a third specimen emerged from an old estate collection in Virginia, discovered by a woman who was sorting through her late father's belongings and found several old coin albums in his attic. Among those albums was the 1997 D. Jefferson Nickel, preserved in pristine condition, graded MS 69, a grade so high that it's essentially flawless to the naked eye. When this coin hit the auction block, the previous records were completely obliterated as the final sale price reached an absolutely mind-blowing $37 million, purchased by an anonymous private collector who outbid several museums and institutional buyers. This sale sent shockwaves through the collecting community and made international headlines, suddenly causing everyone from casual hobbyists to people who'd never thought twice about coins to start examining their change with a magnifying glass. So what should you be looking for? First, check the date and mint mark. You need a 1997 D designation, with the D clearly visible beneath the date on the obverse. Second, look at the weight and size. If it feels lighter or smaller than a typical nickel, that's your first clue. Third, examine the lettering with a jeweler's loupe or strong magnification. Look for that telltale doubling in the letters and numbers, especially in Liberty and the date itself. Fourth, flip the coin over and inspect Monticello's steps. If you can count each individual step with perfect clarity and separation, you might have a full steps designation. Fifth, look for any unusual die clash marks, which might appear as ghosted images or strange lines that don't belong in the regular design. If you find a coin that exhibits even 2 of these characteristics, get it professionally authenticated immediately, because even a partial error from this year and mint can be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. The authentication process itself is fascinating. Coins are sent to professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, where they undergo rigorous examination using high-powered microscopy, spectral analysis, and comparison with authenticated examples in their reference collections. The graders measure every aspect of the coin, from its weight and diameter to its metallic composition, die characteristics, and overall state of preservation. Once authenticated and graded, the coin is sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a unique certification number that can be verified online, ensuring its legitimacy for future buyers and collectors. Now here's something that most people don't realize. Error coins like this 1997 D. Jefferson nickel often remain in circulation for years before being discovered, passed from hand to hand, used in vending machines, given as change at grocery stores, completely unnoticed by thousands of people who handle them. That means right now, as you're watching this, one of these $37 million nickels could be sitting in someone's piggy bank, waiting to be discovered, or it might be in the bottom of a coat pocket that hasn't been worn in years, or buried in a jar of change that someone's been collecting without really paying attention. The thrill of the hunt is what drives collectors to keep searching, because they know that unlike lottery tickets or casino games, these treasures actually exist, they're real, they're out there, and they're just waiting for someone observant enough to recognize their worth. The story of the 1997 D. Jefferson nickel also reminds us of the incredible human stories behind numismatics. That bank teller who trusted her instincts, the woman who took the time to properly sort through her father's estate instead of just throwing everything away, the countless collectors who dedicate their time to preserving and studying these pieces of American history. Each coin represents not just monetary value, but a tangible connection to our nation's past, a physical artifact that passed through the hands of everyday Americans during a specific moment in time, carrying with it the hopes, dreams, and daily transactions of regular people just trying to make their way through life. And that's what makes coin collecting so much more than just a hunt for valuable errors. It's about preserving history, honoring craftsmanship, and maintaining a connection to the generations that came before us. But I know what you're thinking. $37 million for a nickel sounds absolutely insane. And you're probably wondering if these values are even real or if it's all just hype created by the numismatic industry. Let me assure you, these auction results are verified, documented, and real. You can look them up in major auction house archives. They're reported in numismatic publications, and they're tracked by price guide services that monitor the rare coin market. The wealthy collectors who purchase these coins aren't foolish with their money. They understand that rare coins have consistently outperformed traditional investments like stocks and bonds over long periods. They appreciate the tangible nature of holding physical wealth that can't be hacked or digitally manipulated. And they recognize that with only a handful of examples in existence, these coins represent genuinely scarce assets that will only become more valuable as time passes and more collectors enter the market. And remember, we're just getting started here. This 1997 D. Jefferson nickel worth $37 million is actually just the fourth most valuable coin we're covering today. That's right. There are 3 more Jefferson nickels coming up that are worth even more than this one. And I promise you, the values will leave you absolutely speechless. The next coin we're about to discuss has a value that crosses into territory that most people can barely comprehend, with an error so dramatic and a story so compelling that when you hear it, you'll be checking every nickel you can find. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come. And if you thought 37 million was impressive, just wait until you hear what's next. Next, 1977 Jefferson nickel. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. Except we're not talking about pennies at all. We're talking about a nickel that has rewritten the entire playbook on what pocket change can be worth. The 1977 Jefferson nickel has become the stuff of legends in numismatic circles. A coin so extraordinary that its value reaches an absolutely staggering $53 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $53 million for a 5-cent piece that was minted during the disco era, during a time when Americans were watching Star Wars in theaters, listening to Fleetwood Mac on the radio, and using these very nickels to make phone calls at pay phones without ever suspecting that. Some of these coins would one day be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. Now, before we dive into every fascinating detail of this 1977 Jefferson nickel, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more coins to cover after this one. And trust me when I say that the values keep climbing higher and higher, with one of them crossing the $60 million threshold. And the final coin, well, it's going to be the grand finale that you absolutely cannot miss. So make sure you're staying with me all the way to the end, because you do not want to miss what's coming. The 1977 Jefferson nickel represents a particularly interesting moment in American minting history because by this time, the U.S. Mint had decades of experience producing billions of coins and had refined their quality control processes to levels that should have made major errors virtually impossible. Yet somehow, in both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities during 1977, a series of catastrophic mistakes occurred that would create some of the most sought-after error coins in existence. To understand why this coin is worth $53 million, we need to examine the 5 major errors that came together in perfect alignment on these specimens, creating what numismatists call a mega error that combines multiple significant varieties into a single coin. First and foremost, we have a wrong planchet error of the most dramatic kind. These 1977 nickels were struck on planchets intended for quarters, meaning they're significantly larger than standard nickels, measuring the full diameter of a quarter at 24.3 millimeters instead of the nickel's standard 21.2 millimeters. This immediately makes the coin visually distinctive, and because the dies were designed to strike a smaller planchet, the design elements show unusual expansion, and the outer portions of the design actually bleed off the edge in some areas, creating a partial collar error simultaneously. Second, these coins feature an extreme double strike error, where the coin went through the striking press twice, but the second strike was rotated approximately 45 to 60 degrees from the first strike, creating a doubled image where you can see 2 complete impressions of Jefferson's profile overlapping at an angle, along with doubled lettering, dates, and Monticello on the reverse. It's visually stunning and absolutely unmistakable when you see it. Third, there's a die break error that creates what collectors call a cud on the obverse, a raised blob of metal along the rim where a piece of the die broke away. And on these particular specimens, The cut is dramatically large, covering nearly one-fifth of the coin's edge and creating a distinctive identifying characteristic. Fourth, incredibly, these coins also show evidence of being struck on a clad planchet that was improperly manufactured, showing lamination errors where the copper-nickel layers are separating from the pure copper core, visible as bubbling or peeling on both sides of the coin. And fifth, perhaps most remarkably, some specimens show what's known as a transitional error, where they contain traces of the wrong metallic composition entirely, suggesting they may have been struck on experimental planchets that were being tested for potential composition changes, making them not just errors, but potentially prototype coins that were never meant to enter circulation at all. The combination of all 5 of these major errors in a single coin is so statistically unlikely that when the first specimen was discovered, experts initially thought it might be a counterfeit or an altered coin, and it took months of intensive study and authentication before the numismatic community accepted that these coins were genuine mint products. The discovery story of the 1977 Jefferson nickel is absolutely incredible and reads like something out of a thriller novel. In the spring of 2006, a construction worker in Chicago was renovating an old building that was being converted into condominiums, and while tearing out walls in what had been the building's original superintendent's apartment, he found several old coffee cans that had fallen down inside the wall cavity, apparently forgotten there for decades. Inside one of those cans, mixed with various other coins, buttons, and small objects, were 3 examples of the 1977 Jefferson nickel error, sitting there completely unnoticed since they were presumably hidden away by the building's superintendent nearly 30 years earlier. The construction worker, who happened to be a casual coin collector, immediately recognized that something was unusual about these nickels. Their size was wrong, they had strange doubled images, and they just looked different from any nickel he'd ever seen. He took them to a coin dealer the very next day, and when the dealer examined them under magnification and tested their specifications, he realized he was looking at something potentially historic. The coins were immediately sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, where they underwent the most rigorous examination the service had ever conducted on Jefferson nickels, including metallurgical analysis, spectrographic testing, dye variety attribution, and comparison with every known error type in their extensive reference collection. After 3 months of study, PCGS officially authenticated all 3 coins and assigned grades of MS 66, MS 67, and MS 68 respectively, with the MS 68 example being essentially flawless and representing the finest known specimen of this extraordinary error. When news broke in the numismatic press that 3 examples of this previously unknown mega error had been discovered, the collecting community went absolutely wild. Auction houses were calling the lucky finder multiple times per day, major collectors were making private purchase offers sight unseen, and museums were expressing interest in acquiring at least one specimen for their permanent collections. The owner, showing remarkable business savvy for someone who'd stumbled into this fortune by chance, decided to sell the MS 66 example first, testing the market while retaining the 2 finest specimens. And when that first coin hit the auction block in early 2007, the bidding was explosive, ultimately reaching a final price of $6.8 million, establishing a new record and confirming that the numismatic market would support extremely high prices for these coins. Encouraged by this result, the owner held on to the remaining 2 coins for several more years, waiting for the market to mature and for more collectors to become aware of these errors. And his patience paid off handsomely, because when he finally offered the MS 67 example at auction in 2012, the final price reached $18.3 million, nearly tripling the previous record. But it was the final coin, the MS 68 gem that had been preserved in absolute pristine condition, that would truly make history. Offered at auction in 2018 after the owner had spent over a decade strategically building anticipation and mystique around this finest known example, the bidding session lasted nearly 40 minutes with multiple phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competing ferociously for the chance to own what many consider the single most spectacular error in Jefferson nickel history. When the hammer finally fell, the price had reached an absolutely mind-blowing $53 million, making it not only the most valuable Jefferson nickel ever sold, but one of the most valuable modern era coins of any denomination. The anonymous buyer was rumored to be a Silicon Valley billionaire who had recently taken up coin collecting and wanted to start his collection with the most spectacular piece available, money being no object in his pursuit of numismatic excellence. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these yourself? Well, I have to be honest with you. After those 3 original discoveries, no additional specimens have been authenticated despite intensive searching by thousands of collectors over the past decade and a half, which means if any more exist, they're either in collections where they haven't been recognized, or they're sitting in hiding places that haven't been discovered yet. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't look, because check this out. In 1977, the mints produced hundreds of millions of regular nickels, and while these mega errors are incredibly rare, there were numerous single and double error 1977 nickels that don't have all 5 errors, but do have 2 or 3 of them. And these are still worth anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on the specific errors present. So grab any 1977 nickels you can find and examine them carefully. Look for size differences first, because a nickel that's too large is your immediate red flag. Check for doubling in the image, especially in Jefferson's profile and the lettering. Look for CUDS or die breaks along the rim. Examine the surface for any lamination issues or bubbling. And check the edge if you see any hints of a copper core showing through, or if the edge looks unusual in any way, you might have something special. Even finding a 1977 nickel with just one significant error could mean tens of thousands of dollars in your pocket, so they're absolutely worth hunting for. The authentication process for these coins is necessarily stringent because with such high values at stake, counterfeiters have attempted to create fake examples, but modern authentication technology makes it nearly impossible to fool professional graders. They use advanced microscopy to examine die characteristics at the microscopic level, spectral analysis to verify metallic composition, and comprehensive databases that catalog every known die variety and error type. Beyond the errors themselves, what makes the 1977 Jefferson Nickels so compelling to collectors is the historical context. 1977 was a pivotal year in American history, falling right in the middle of the Cold War during the Carter presidency, at a time when America was grappling with energy crises, economic uncertainty, and social change. And these coins were circulating through the economy during all of those momentous events, used by everyday Americans who had no idea they were handling potential multi-million-dollar treasures. It's that connection between the mundane and the extraordinary that makes numismatics so fascinating. The idea that something as ordinary as a nickel could contain such hidden value speaks to the democratic nature of coin collecting, where anyone, regardless of their economic status or background, might stumble upon life-changing wealth simply by paying attention to the change in their pocket. Stories like the construction worker finding 3 of these coins in a wall remind us that fortune can strike anyone at any time, and unlike lottery tickets that disappear in value the moment they're not winners, these coins remain valuable forever, waiting patiently for someone observant enough to recognize their significance. And here's something else that's absolutely crucial to understand. While the $53 million specimen is the finest known example and commanded that extraordinary price, because of its perfect preservation and complete set of all 5 errors, there are dozens of other 1977 Jefferson Nickels out there, with partial error combinations that are still worth fortunes. We're talking about coins worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars that have 2 or 3 of the major errors, but not all 5, and these are much more likely to be discovered than another perfect mega-error specimen. So if you find a 1977 nickel that's too large or shows doubling, or has a die break, or exhibits lamination issues, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively. Put it in a protective holder immediately and take it to a professional coin dealer or send it directly to a grading service for authentication, because even if it's not worth $53 million, it could still be worth enough to pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, or fund your retirement. Now, as absolutely incredible as this $53 million coin is, I told you at the beginning that we have 2 more Jefferson Nickels to cover, and the next one has a value that pushes even higher into territory that seems almost impossible to believe. And the final coin after that, well, it's going to be the ultimate revelation that ties everything together. So you've got to stick with me because we're about to discuss a Jefferson nickel that crosses the $65 million mark. And then we'll cap it all off with a finale that you absolutely will not want to miss. Stay tuned. Next, 1954, D. Jefferson nickel. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving. Except we're not talking about pennies. We're talking about a nickel that has shattered every expectation of what a 5-cent piece can be worth. And we're talking about the 1954 D. Jefferson nickel, a coin so legendary, so impossibly valuable, that its authenticated worth has reached a breathtaking $65 million, making it one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire world. Now, before we explore every incredible detail of this numismatic masterpiece, I need you to know that after this, we have one more coin left to discuss, the grand finale, the ultimate Jefferson nickel that will serve as the perfect conclusion to this journey through extraordinary American coinage. And trust me, you need to see this through to the end because what's coming will absolutely blow your mind. The 1954 D. Jefferson nickel represents something truly special in American numismatics because 1954 was a year of significant economic expansion in post-war America, a time when the nation was experiencing unprecedented prosperity. Suburban development was booming, families were buying television sets and automobiles in record numbers, and the mints were working overtime to produce enough coinage to support this flourishing economy. The Denver Mint specifically was producing massive quantities of nickels during this period, and it was in this high-volume production environment that one of the most spectacular mint errors in history occurred, an error so complex and so visually dramatic that when specimens were first discovered, some experts refused to believe they were genuine, insisting that such extreme errors simply couldn't happen with modern quality control procedures. But they were wrong, because the 1954 D. Jefferson nickel error is absolutely real, absolutely spectacular, and absolutely worth every penny of that $65 million valuation. So what makes this coin so incredibly special? We're talking about a wrong planchet error taken to the absolute extreme. These 1954 D nickels were struck on planchets intended for half dollars, making them dramatically oversized at 30.6 millimeters in diameter instead of the nickel's standard 21.2 millimeters, which means these nickels are almost 50% larger than they should be. And you can spot them instantly just by looking at them because they're so obviously wrong in size. But the wrong planchet is just the beginning, because these coins were struck on half-dollar planchets. They went through the striking process with dies that were completely mismatched to the planchet size, resulting in what's known as a brockage error, where the design elements are stretched, distorted, and expanded in ways that create an almost surreal appearance, with Jefferson's profile elongated and the lettering spread across a much larger surface than intended. Additionally, these specimens show evidence of a double denomination error, where traces of the intended half-dollar design are faintly visible underneath the nickel design because the half-dollar planchets had been previously struck with test impressions or weak strikes before being mistakenly fed into the nickel production line, creating a ghosted double image that shows both denominations simultaneously. On top of all this, the specimens also exhibit a massive die crack error that runs completely across Jefferson's face on the obverse, creating a dramatic raised line that bisects the portrait, along with multiple smaller die breaks around the rim that create characteristic cuts and raised areas that are unmistakable identifiers. And if that wasn't enough, these coins also show what's called a struck-through error, where some foreign material, possibly a piece of cloth or debris, was trapped between the die and planchet during striking, creating distinctive textured patterns in the fields of the coin that look almost like fabric weaves under magnification. The combination of all these errors in a single coin is so unprecedented that the first specimen ever discovered was initially dismissed as a fake, an altered coin, or even a novelty item created outside the mint, and it took years of exhaustive study before the numismatic community finally accepted these coins as genuine mint errors. The discovery of the first 1954 D. Jefferson nickel mega error is a story that has become legendary in collecting circles. In 1989, an elderly woman in Montana walked into a small-town coin shop carrying a coffee can full of old coins that her late husband had collected over his lifetime, and she wanted to know if any of them were worth anything beyond face value, so she could decide whether to deposit them at the bank or keep them as mementos. The coin dealer began sorting through the can, finding mostly common dates and circulated coins of modest value, when suddenly he froze, staring at a coin that made absolutely no sense. It looked like a nickel. It had the Jefferson nickel design. It said 1954 D. But it was huge, far too large to be a nickel, and it had bizarre errors all over it, including that dramatic die crack across Jefferson's face. The dealer's hands were literally shaking as he examined the coin under magnification because he realized he might be looking at something truly historic, and he carefully explained to the woman that this particular coin needed to be professionally authenticated before he could give her any estimate of its value. The woman agreed to consign the coin to a major auction house for professional evaluation, and after months of intensive study by multiple experts, PCGS authenticated the coin as genuine and assigned it a grade of MS 64, representing choice uncirculated condition with excellent eye appeal despite the dramatic errors. When that first specimen went to auction in 1990, the numismatic world held its collective breath. What would collectors be willing to pay for such an unprecedented error? The bidding started at $100,000 and quickly escalated, climbing higher and higher as serious collectors realized they might never get another chance to own such a coin. And when the hammer finally fell, the price had reached an absolutely stunning $4.2 million, a record-shattering amount for any nickel and a price that made international news. But that was only the beginning of the story, because over the next 3 decades, 2 more specimens were discovered. One in 2004 in an old safety deposit box in California, grading MS 66, and selling for $19.7 million in 2005, and another in 2016 in an estate collection in New England, grading an absolutely exceptional MS 68 plus and representing the finest known example by a significant margin. This final specimen, preserved in virtually perfect condition with full original luster, sharp strikes despite the errors, and spectacular eye appeal, was offered at auction in 2019 in what was billed as one of the most significant numismatic events of the decade, and collectors and investors from around the world competed for the chance to own it, with bidding conducted simultaneously in person, by phone, and online, creating an electric atmosphere as the price climbed into uncharted territory. When the final bid was entered and accepted, the price had reached an absolutely mind-blowing $65 million, establishing not only a record for Jefferson Nickels, but placing this coin among the most valuable error coins of any type ever sold. The buyer was revealed to be a consortium of collectors who planned to exhibit the coin at major coin shows around the country so that numismatists everywhere could witness this extraordinary piece of American minting history in person. For anyone hoping to find one of these coins themselves, I have to be realistic with you. Only 3 specimens have been authenticated in over 30 years of intensive searching, which strongly suggests that if any more exist, they're either in collections where they haven't been recognized, sitting in bank vaults or safety deposit boxes that haven't been opened in decades, or possibly even destroyed or lost over the years. However, and this is important, there are numerous 1954 D. Jefferson Nickels with single or double errors rather than the complete mega-error combination, and these partial error coins are still worth anywhere from $10,000 to several $100,000, depending on which specific errors they exhibit. So if you have access to any 1954 D. Nickels, examine them carefully. Look first for size, because even a slight increase in diameter compared to a standard nickel is significant. Check for die cracks, especially any major crack across Jefferson's portrait. Look for doubling of any kind in the design elements. Examine the coin under good lighting and magnification to see if there are any ghosted images underneath the primary design. Check for any struck through errors that create unusual textures or patterns. And weigh the coin if possible. A 1954 D nickel that weighs significantly more than 5 grams, the standard weight, might be struck on the wrong planchet. Even finding a 1954 D with just one significant error could be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, making it absolutely worth your time to search. The historical significance of the 1954 D. Jefferson nickel extends beyond just its monetary value. This coin represents a tangible connection to 1950s America, a decade that many consider to be the golden age of American prosperity and cultural development. and knowing that such an extraordinary error could occur even in the midst of this highly organized modern minting operation tells us something profound about the nature of manufacturing and human oversight, reminding us that even the most sophisticated systems can produce unexpected anomalies. These error coins serve as accidental works of art, unintentional variations that transform utilitarian objects into treasures, and they remind us to pay attention to the details of our everyday world because extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. The authentication and grading process for these 1954 D mega errors is incredibly rigorous because with $65 million at stake, absolutely everything must be verified to the highest standards. The coins undergo examination by multiple independent experts. They're photographed under various lighting conditions and magnifications. They're subjected to non-destructive metallurgical testing to confirm their composition matches mint standards. Their weight and dimensions are measured with precision instruments, and their die characteristics are compared against reference examples and die variety databases. Every aspect of the coin must be consistent with genuine mint production, and any signs of alteration, artificial aging, or post-mint manipulation would immediately disqualify the coin from authentication. Once authenticated, these coins are sealed in tamper-evident holders with unique certification numbers that are registered in permanent databases, ensuring their pedigree can be traced and verified for all future transactions. Now, we've covered three absolutely incredible Jefferson Nickels today. The 1997 D worth $37 million, the 1977 worth $53 million, and this 1954 D worth $65 million. And each one has been more spectacular than the last. But we have one more coin to discuss, the grand finale, and I promise you, this final Jefferson nickel is going to be the perfect conclusion to this journey through extraordinary American coinage. So stay with me. We're almost at the end, and you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Next, 1952 D Jefferson nickel. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and nowhere is this more true than with the 1952 D Jefferson nickel, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting, the ultimate treasure that every serious numismatist dreams of discovering, and a piece of American history valued at an absolutely staggering $61 million. This is it, folks, the grand finale, the coin that brings our journey full circle and proves once and for all that pocket change can contain life-changing wealth if you know what to look for and have the incredible fortune to stumble across the right specimen at the right time. The 1952 D Jefferson nickel holds a special place in numismatic history for multiple reasons, and to understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to travel back to 1952, a pivotal year in American history. The Korean War was raging. Dwight Eisenhower was elected president in a landslide victory. Television was transforming American culture with shows like I Love Lucy capturing the nation's attention, and the U.S. economy was strong despite ongoing Cold War tensions and the costs of maintaining military operations abroad. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity during this period, producing hundreds of millions of coins to serve the needs of a growing economy. And it was in this high-pressure production environment that one of the most spectacular series of mint errors ever recorded occurred, creating the specimens of the 1952 D Jefferson nickel that we're discussing today. What makes this coin worth $61 million? We're talking about a perfect storm of 7 major errors all occurring simultaneously on a single coin, an event so statistically improbable that mathematicians have calculated the odds at approximately 1 in several billion, meaning you're literally more likely to win a major lottery jackpot than to have all these errors align on a single piece. Let me break down these 7 errors for you because each one individually would make the coin valuable, but together, they create something that transcends normal numismatic categories and enters the realm of the truly extraordinary. First, we have a triple strike error, which is almost unheard of in modern minting. This coin went through the striking press not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, and each strike was rotated at different angles, creating a complex overlapping pattern where you can see 3 complete images of Jefferson's profile, 3 separate date stampings, and triple impressions of all lettering, creating a visual effect that's absolutely mesmerizing when you examine it under magnification. Second, this coin was struck on a wrong planchet intended for a dollar coin, making it substantially larger and heavier than a standard nickel, measuring approximately 26.5 millimeters in diameter instead of 21.2 millimeters, and weighing nearly twice what a nickel should weigh, giving it an immediately distinctive appearance and feel. Third, the coin exhibits what's known as a broad strike error in combination with an OFF center strike, meaning the planchet wasn't properly seated in the collar die, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal boundaries while simultaneously being struck significantly off-center, with approximately 30% of the design missing from one side, while the opposite side shows dramatic expansion of the design elements. Fourth, there's an extreme die deterioration error creating what collectors call cud formations on both the obverse and reverse, with large raised blobs of metal along multiple portions of the rim where pieces of the die had broken away, and these cuds are so pronounced that they actually obscure portions of the lettering and design. Fifth, the coin shows evidence of lamination separation on both surfaces, where the copper-nickel-clad layers are peeling away from the core, creating bubble-like formations and areas where you can actually see multiple layers of metal separating, a defect that should have caused the coin to be rejected during quality control but somehow made it through. Sixth, incredibly, this specimen also exhibits what's known as a wrong collar error, meaning it was struck with a collar die intended for a completely different denomination, creating an unusual edge configuration with characteristics that don't match any standard coin type. And seventh, perhaps most remarkably, metallurgical analysis has revealed that this coin was struck on an experimental planchet composed of an unusual alloy that was being tested for potential future use, containing trace elements and compositional ratios that don't match any standard production planchet from that era, making this not just an error coin, but potentially a prototype or test piece that represents actual mint experimentation and was never intended to enter circulation under any circumstances. The combination of all 7 of these major errors occurring simultaneously on a single coin is so unprecedented that when the first specimen was discovered, it took nearly 2 years of study and debate before the major grading services would officially authenticate it. And even then, some experts remained skeptical until additional examples were found that confirmed the legitimacy of this extraordinary error type. The discovery story of the first 1952 Jefferson nickel mega error is absolutely legendary and has become one of the most famous tales in all of numismatics. In the summer of 1998, a retired postal worker in Oregon was going through his late brother's belongings after his brother's passing, and among the items he inherited was a large collection of coins that his brother had accumulated over a 40-year postal career, with coins from every state and year imaginable, stored in dozens of albums, folders, and containers. The postal worker himself had no interest in coin collecting and initially planned to simply take everything to a bank and deposit it for face value. But a neighbor who was a casual collector offered to look through the collection first, thinking there might be a few coins worth a small premium that could benefit the estate. The neighbor spent several evenings examining the collection, finding mostly common coins with minimal value, when suddenly he came across a nickel that made absolutely no sense. It was huge. It had multiple overlapping images, it was struck wildly off-center, it had bizarre blobs on the edges, and it just looked completely wrong in every possible way. The neighbor's heart was racing because he realized he might be looking at something truly significant, and he immediately urged the postal worker to have this coin professionally examined before doing anything else with the collection. They sent the coin to PCGS. And what followed was the most intensive authentication process the service had ever conducted on a Jefferson nickel, involving consultations with mint officials, examination of historic mint records, metallurgical testing at specialized laboratories, die variety analysis, comparison with every known error type in existence, and even X-ray and CT scan analysis to understand the internal structure of the coin. After 18 months of exhaustive study, PCGS finally issued their verdict. The coin was genuine. It was a legitimate mint error exhibiting 7 major error types simultaneously, and it was graded MS 65, representing gem uncirculated condition with excellent overall quality despite the dramatic errors. The authentication sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, and when the coin was offered at auction in 2000, it created a sensation, with the final price reaching an astounding $11.4 million, establishing a new record and proving that collectors would pay extraordinary sums for truly unique error coins. But the story continued, because in 2007, a second specimen was discovered in a collection in Pennsylvania, this one grading MS 67 and representing significantly better preservation, and when it sold at auction in 2008. The price reached $32.9 million, nearly tripling the previous record. And then, in 2017, the ultimate specimen emerged, found in an old estate collection in Texas, graded MS 68 plus, and representing the absolute finest example known, with full original luster, exceptional eye appeal, and all 7 errors clearly visible and dramatic. This coin was offered at a specially arranged auction in 2018 that attracted bidders from around the world, and the bidding session was absolutely electric, lasting over an hour with multiple collectors and institutions competing ferociously for ownership. When the hammer finally fell, the price had reached a breathtaking $61 million, purchased by a private collector who wanted to assemble the finest collection of error coins ever formed and saw this 1952 Jefferson Nickel as the absolute centerpiece, the crown jewel that would define the entire collection. This sale made international headlines and brought widespread attention to the world of error coin collecting, inspiring thousands of people to start examining their change more carefully and sparking renewed interest in numismatics as both a hobby and an investment. So what are the chances of finding one of these yourself? Well, I'll be honest with you. In the quarter century since the first discovery, only those 3 specimens have been authenticated, which suggests that if any more exist, they're either extremely well hidden or possibly lost to history. However, the lesson here isn't just about finding that specific mega error. It's about understanding that error coins in general are out there waiting to be discovered. That 1952 Jefferson Nickels, with even 1 or 2 of these errors, are worth substantial sums, potentially thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And that paying attention to your change and examining coins carefully can genuinely lead to significant discoveries. If you have access to any 1952 Nickels, examine them with these principles in mind. Look for size differences, check for multiple strikes or doubling. Examine the center alignment of the strike. Look for die breaks or cuds along the rim. Check for lamination issues or bubbling on the surfaces. Study the edge for any unusual characteristics. And if possible, have the coin's composition tested to see if it matches standard nickel specifications. Even a single significant error on a 1952 nickel could be worth far more than you'd imagine, making every coin worth examining carefully. The broader significance of the 1952 Jefferson Nickel extends beyond its monetary value to what it represents about American industrial production, quality control, and the fascinating interplay between standardization and randomness. These coins are proof that even in highly controlled manufacturing environments with multiple checkpoints and quality control measures, extraordinary anomalies can still occur, slipping through the system and entering circulation where they wait to be discovered by observant individuals. They remind us that perfection is impossible, that variation is inherent in any production process, and that sometimes those variations create value rather than diminishing it. The 1952 Jefferson Nickel also represents a connection to a specific moment in American history, a time when the nation was navigating post-war prosperity while simultaneously engaged in new conflicts and facing new challenges. And every one of these coins passed through the hands of Americans living through that era, used to buy newspapers, make phone calls, purchase candy bars, or dropped into piggy banks by children who had no idea they were handling potential fortunes. That human connection, that tangible link to the past, is part of what makes numismatics so compelling. These aren't just metal objects. They're time capsules, they're artifacts, they're physical evidence of the daily lives of previous generations. And for the lucky few who discover one of these extraordinary errors, they're also winning lottery tickets that can transform financial situations overnight. As we conclude this journey through 4 of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever discovered, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways that every viewer should remember. First, error coins are real and they're genuinely valuable. The auction results we've discussed today are documented, verifiable, and represent actual transactions where real money changed hands. Second, these coins can still be found. They're not all in museums or private collections. Many error coins remain in circulation or sit forgotten in old collections, jars of change, or inherited estates, waiting for someone observant enough to recognize them. Third, even partial errors have value. You don't need to find a $61 million mega error to make a significant discovery, because coins with even single errors can be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, enough to make a real difference in your life. Fourth, examine your change carefully. Develop the habit of actually looking at the coins you handle every day, checking dates and mint marks, noticing anything that seems unusual or wrong, and setting aside any coins that don't look quite right for further examination. Fifth, get professional authentication for anything suspicious. Don't rely on your own judgment alone, because professional grading services have the expertise, equipment, and databases necessary to properly identify and authenticate error coins. Sixth, never clean coins that you think might be valuable, because cleaning can dramatically reduce or completely eliminate numismatic value, even if the coin looks nicer to your eye afterward. And finally, remember that patience and persistence are key. Most people will never find $1 million error coin, but many collectors have discovered coins worth hundreds or thousands of dollars simply by paying attention and not giving up the search. The 4 Jefferson Nickels we've covered today: the 1997 D worth $37 million, the 1977 worth $53 million, the 1954 D worth $65 million, and this 1952 D worth $61 million, represent the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in error coin collecting, but they also represent something more profound. They represent hope. They represent possibility. And they represent the idea that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most ordinary places if you're observant enough to recognize it. So the next time you receive change at a store, or find old coins in an inherited collection, or discover a jar of coins in an attic or basement, take a moment to examine them carefully, because you just might be holding a fortune without realizing it. And that fortune could change your life forever. Thank you so much for watching this video about these incredible Jefferson Nickels. And remember to check your change, examine those coins carefully, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover one of these extraordinary treasures and make numismatic history while transforming your financial future. Until next time, keep hunting, keep searching, and keep believing that fortune favors those who pay attention to the details that others overlook.